Good day everybody, this is Jerry from BSK Garage. Today's video we're going to look at a P0132 and a P1128. First thing I'm just doing is going over the codes, and I'm just looking at the live data with the engine off, ignition on, just seeing if there's anything out of the ordinary before we start to go in and properly troubleshoot and diagnose the issue without getting the parts cannon out. The first thing we're going to look at is P0132 and possible issues. K41, O2 sensor 11 signal shorted to voltage. K902, O2 sensor 11 return circuit shorted to voltage. K41, O2 sensor 11 signal circuit open. O2 sensor 11 are possible problem with the PCM. So now when you have two or more codes appear at once, you want to look at similarities between the two codes to help narrow down the troubleshooting and diagnose and solve the issue. And now with the P1128, closed loop fueling not achieved, the possible causes are but not limited to restricted fuel supply, fuel pump module, O2 signal circuit, O2 return circuit, O2 heater operation, O2 sensor, map sensor operation, ECT sensor operation, engine mechanical problem, fuel filter, fuel regulator problem, and our PCM. So the similarities between the two codes seem to signal towards the O2 sensor itself are the electrical wiring. So this is where we're going to start and troubleshoot. So the first test we're going to do is, if you look at the O2 sensor voltage, we got 4.99, almost 5 volts. We're going to start the Jeep up. And if the Jeep still has 5 volts after it started, we have a problem with the sensor shorted to voltage. Could be a problem in the sensor itself or in the wiring harness. Now we're just coming back to the live data, going to have a closer look. We can tell right now that we are in closed loop operation. O2 sensors 1.1 and 2.1 closed loop. The voltage is below 5 volts. So at this point in time, we know we are not shorted to voltage, but this could also be an intermittent problem. So we got to go down the troubleshooting diagnostic tree to see if we can fish out just what exactly the problem is. The first test I'm going to do is K41 O2 sensor pin 4 test. Ignition off, disconnect O2 sensor 1.1, disconnect PCM C2 harness connector, turn ignition on, measure pin 4 for voltage. If voltage is present, the problem could be in the PCM, our wiring harness. So the O2 sensor that we're testing is right there, coming right off the manifold. And I'm just pulling it apart. It's behind the shock tower, makes it hard to see. Now, one of the first things you want to do is you want to start looking at the plugs for corrosion. If there's any type of corrosion, that could be a problem. So you want to make sure the plugs are all nice and clean. And next thing we're going to go to is the PCM C2 connector, which can be a little bit of a pain in the butt to get it off. You kind of have to, once you get that lever up, wiggle her out. And also you want to check those pins to make sure there's nothing in there and corroded. And everything's looking good. So next test, we are plugged into pin number 4 on the O2 sensor wiring harness on the Jeep, and make sure that the C2 is disconnected. Multimeter's hooked up. Now I'm going to go inside the Jeep, turn the ignition on. There we have it. Ignition's turned on. Going back to have a look at the meter. And of course, once I said, if there's voltage present, there could be a problem in the wiring harness or with the PCM. There's no voltage present. So now we're going to go on to the next test. So the next test we're going to do is the K902 pin 302 sensor 1.1 shorted to voltage. If voltage is present, could be problems with the wiring and our PCM. So back to our O2 sensor plug in the Jeep. I am plugged into pin number 3. We are hooked up to the multimeter. Once again, we're going to go back inside the Jeep, turn the ignition on, go back to the meter, and then verify if we have voltage present. The purpose of these tests is to determine if the fault is with the PCM, the wiring, or the O2 sensor. And right now, we're not showing any voltage. So we're going to go on to the next step because we tested good. So this next test determines if the O2 sensor is at fault. Ignition off, connect C2 and O2 sensor wiring. Connect the jumper between pins 3 and 4. Turn the ignition on and watch the voltage. If it's between 2.3 to 2.7, the O2 sensor is at fault and you will need to change it out. So just plug in the C2 harness back in, and you need to plug the O2 sensor back in as well.
So I don't know how well you're going to be able to see. So that's pins jumper 3 and 4. You want to turn the ignition on and then measure the voltage.
Just going to turn the ignition on, then go back to the scanner and look at the data.
So there you have it. We're testing bad. O2 sensor volts 2.5. You can see the volts up top is at 0 with the jumper. You can see 2.47, 4.99, all the same except for right here. Verified O2 sensor is at fault, but we're also going to do the rest of the troubleshooting in case you pass this test and continue on.
For the next two final tests, K41 pin 4 signal circuit open, turn ignition off, disconnect O2 sensor and C2 connector. Measure the resistance between pin 4 and pin 44 on the C2 harness. If over 5 ohms, repair the wiring harness. And if it's not over 5 ohms, we're going to go on to the next test. Back underneath, I got my little jumper wire there connected to pin number 4. Going to measure resistance on the C2 harness. You can see I'm plugged into pin 44. Just using some reference right there. Make sure that I'm on pin 44 and get a close-up look right there. And my meter says the resistance is 0.2. So I am good. So we're going to go on to the next test. So this test is the same as the last one. K902 pin 3, return circuit open, turn the ignition off. The O2 sensor and the C2 connection should still be off if you just did the last test. Measure the resistance between pin 3 and pin 19 on C2 harness. If over 5 ohms, repair the wiring harness. And this is the last test. If you've gone through all this, the problem is most likely with the PCM. So now going back to the O2 sensor wiring harness, you're going to see I have my jumper plugged into pin number 3 right there as such. Going back over to the C2 wiring harness or the connector, looking on my sheets, pin number 19, O2 return signal. And you can get a good look at it right there. Everything's looking good. Go to the meter. And you're going to see I'm not over 5 ohms, so I tested good. So your guys' issue may be different than mine, but mine, the test determined that the O2 sensor was at fault. So I'm just replacing the O2 sensor right here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments, post them below. And check out my playlist for more Jeep JK DIY repair videos. I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Have a great day.